I'm Sam Norman, and I'm talking to Jane Moore, who's the author of The Second Wives Club, published by Arrow Books. Jane, how did you go about researching for this book?
Well, I'm not a second wife myself, but a lot of my friends are, and whenever I had suppers with various girlfriends, I'd noticed that there would be 3 or 4 of them that would sit at the end of the table and they'd be having their own little sort of sphere of conversation. So I'd sort of listen. And it became apparent that all they were talking about were the first wives of their husbands. So I started to think, and of course there's the very famous Olivia Goldsmith book, First Wives Club, and I thought, well, no one's done it from the point of view of the woman that comes afterwards. So I thought that's a good idea for a book. So I then deliberately had a supper at my house where I invited all of my friends who I knew that were second wives. I think there were about 8 of them. Got loads of alcohol in, lit the touch paper, and off they went, just talking, assured that it was all off the record, etc. And they just started talking about these first wives that they have to deal with. And it was quite interesting because a couple of them had what the tabloid newspapers would describe the first wife from hell. He was always making life very difficult, you know, in the traditional way. Mm-hmm. But the one who, at the end of the evening, everybody decided had the worst problem of all was the one who had the first wife who was still best friends with her husband. Yeah. Because actually she was part of his life a lot more. And there wasn't that common ground of, you know, coming home and saying, you never guess what she's done now, which you can have with the first wife from hell. He would always say, oh, darling, I don't know why you get so upset. She's lovely, you know. And then there's the second wife who's married a widower, which is another one, because the photos are always out. The in-laws are always round if there's children, you know. You can't ever get away from it. And they take on angelic status.
You can never be as good, exactly. Yeah.
So lots of different categories, really. So the 4 women in the book, I've chosen for the reason that the fact that they're all kind of married to men with different types of first wives, and that's sort of the thinking behind the whole plot.
Now, this is your 4th novel?
Yeah.
4th novel. And you're very, I mean, they're very lucrative. I know that you're incredibly successful. Do you find you're under pressure to come up with ideas for the next, or do you kind of take a pause when you finish one and wait?
Funny enough, ideas are not my problem. I've got enough ideas to probably write another 10 books. And the ideas and the characters all sort of come into my head quite well. For me, it's the sheer act of sitting down and getting on with it, because everybody says, oh, I'm going to write a novel one day, and they think they're going to do it in their lunch break. And it's actually really, really hard work. And I was one of those people, particularly being a journalist, where I thought, oh, how hard could it be? And then started to write my first one. It was like, oh, actually, it's really tough. And you have to be incredibly disciplined and self-motivated as well to make yourself sit down and get on with it.
And do you always know exactly where you're going? Or?
Yeah, I have to say, plot is something that comes quite naturally to me, and you know, it's the old cliche of it's a page turner, but people say that to me about my books, and for me that's a great compliment. And I do get a lot of emails from people that have bought the book saying, oh, I read it in 2 days. Now, a lot of authors would be horrified by that. They'd think, oh, I want my work to be considered, you know. I love the fact that because it means that they've not been able to put it down and they've just read it really quickly, which is what my market is, really. You know, I like to think that I don't think my market is particularly people that read all the time. I think it's people that have got small children, they read when they can in bite-sized chunks, or they might read when they go on holiday, and I think that's my market, and that's absolutely what I focus on. That's what I'm like.
A lucrative market too.
Yeah, that's what I'm like, you know. I basically am writing for myself.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jane.